The U.S. continuing its push for diplomacy with Iran. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Pakistan for the talks. While Iran's negotiating team is also in country, the two sides are not expected to meet face-to-face. Meanwhile, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is reminding Tehran the U.S. controls the Strait of Hormuz as the administration continues to apply military pressure.
America's military is unmatched, projecting power, denying passage to adversaries, and protecting our interest at the time and place of our choosing. No one sails from the Strait of Hormuz to anywhere in the world without the permission of the United States Navy. To the regime in Tehran, the blockade is tightening by the hour. We are in control, nothing in, nothing out.
So let's bring in retired U.S. Army Colonel Joel Rayburn and former diplomat. Colonel, thank you for being here. I want to just get quickly your read on what you think may come of these talks and really where the pressure point lies. Does the U.S. have time on their side, or does Iran?
Well, to answer the last question up front, Griff, the U.S. has time on its side. That's because of the vulnerability, the weakness of the Iranian military position. They can't afford to return to hostilities, but also the weakness of their economy. I mean, they were already on the brink of economic collapse through their own mismanagement and then sanctions. Back in January, remember, it was the economic disaffection that helped to fuel the nationwide uprising back then. So, no, they do not have time on their hands. They hope that they do. They hope that there's mystically some sort of political and economic pressure that's going to compel President Trump to stop the war prematurely. That's what they're hoping for. To get that, they need to avert a return to hostilities. They need the talks in Islamabad or wherever else to be strung out without a decision. That's their best objective.
Colonel, it seems that there's really two camps in Iran now that we're dealing with. One are those that are more pragmatic, that are like the foreign minister, Arachi, that's in Islamabad now, that may, feeling this economic pressure, and their currency has never been this devalued. But then there are the hardliners, like Ahmad Vahidi, the commander of the IRGC. How do you see that playing out? Does one have to win over the other?
Well, Griff, look, there are at least two camps. There are probably more camps than we know inside Iran, because the top level of leadership, Supreme Leader Khamenei had ruled Iran for almost 40 years, 37 years. So they're working out different factions, how they relate to one another, and who's going to be calling it, what their power distribution is. It's not just there's Revolutionary Guards. Revolutionary Guards themselves are factionalized. And they have but the Revolutionary Guards, generally speaking, have a hardline attitude about preserving the foreign terrorist networks that the Iranian regime has been using, about preserving the nuclear program. And then they're really pitched against the people that actually have to run the administrative state and run the economy, like President Pezeshkian. Araghchi, I think, probably represents that camp. Speaker of Parliament Gallup is sort of in between. He's a former Revolutionary Guards general, but he has to actually deal with the administrative state and the economy as well.
And just quickly, before we run out of time, I want to lay out, so Ahmad Vahidi, who is commanding the IRGC, is not new to this. He's 67 years old. He was the first commander of the Quds Force that was started by Ali Khamenei, Mujtaba, who is in charge now's father, and he was, of course, the defense minister years ago under President Ahmadinejad. And so you wonder, he must be towards the top of our U.S. target list if indeed he is the one that is influencing the current Supreme Commander Khamenei and holding out.
I think that's absolutely right. If there's a return to hostilities, you have to expect that he'll be on the target list. He is a bad man. He was the predecessor, as you say, of commander of the Quds Force. That's the foreign terrorist external network that was commanded for decades after him by the infamous Qasem Soleimani. He's the guy under whose command the Quds Force blew up the Jewish center in Buenos Aires in 1994. So he's got a lot of blood on his hands, both in that capacity and then later as the defense minister and so on. You're absolutely right.
That's a great point and great insight as always. Colonel Joel Rayburn, thank you for taking time this morning.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.